Hello, and welcome to the Make It Work podcast, a podcast about performers making their own work. I'm your host, Cluanny Saunders. I'm an actor, a singer, and also I write and produce my own work sometimes. Now, as a performer in this industry, I find that we are constantly encouraged to make our own work. But exactly how do we do that? In this podcast, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the work of some performer makers in the theater scene in the UK and look at how they started, how they funded themselves, where they got their ideas, and much, much more. So join us, learn with us, and let's make it work. Now, my guest today is Sam Cochrane. So Sam is the artistic director of Gigglemug Theater and the co-creator of their recent hits, Timpson the Musical, which I was watching last night on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Did your homework? Did your homework for it?
I did my homework.
Nice.
I did my
It's quite a long show, so
Yeah,
good
no,
job.
I did, yeah. Runesicle, which I watched at Edinburgh Fringe, and actually I think I had a small part in the show that day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm intrigued to find out which role you did along the way.
I tried to hide, and then you found me
Oh,
very
yeah.
quickly.
Great.
Very
Love
quickly.
that.
There's a little bit of audience interaction in that show.
Yeah, quite a bit. Quite a bit.
And then Scouts the Musical, which is premiering at the Other Palace this summer from 20th of June to the 9th of July.
That's it, yeah.
Great. So that's all go at the moment.
Yeah. Yes, so we're starting, depending on when this goes out, at least right now, we're starting rehearsals in a few weeks' time. And and then we'll hit the ground running, hopefully, and do the show. It's really nice. It's been extended already by a week, which is cool. It was just going to be 2 weeks. And the response was just really, really great. We didn't expect it at all, to be like what it was. We kind of had this idea that if we, partnered with the Scouts and they told Scout groups and Scout leaders about it, or at least put it on their socials, that they might come and watch. And it's working, which is nice because we just didn't know whether they would or not. I feel like you have no real concept especially with the shows that we've been making. We don't really know whether the audiences that they are for, all these different, because it seems to be a few different audiences. We've got kind of fringe theatre, musical theatre, improv, and then of course whatever the show is about, because we take these IP, bits of IP and turn a show from it. And we didn't know whether the Scouts would show up, and it sounds like they are, which is really nice. Yeah.
So did you approach them with the idea fully formed, and then they said, yeah, we're happy to back you on this, or?
Yeah, so that's the way it's worked for the three shows that you mentioned. With Timpson, it was, very, I think I just found James Timpson's email online, which is, I can't believe it was available. A lot of the time, you have to do some digging, I think, with Runesicle, with Jagex, who make the game RuneScape, and then with the Scouts, it took a bit of searching, and it's usually linked with some sort of presentation they did once their email appears on screen, or like with their other line of work or something. You've got to try and find their email that way. So I've had a bit of practice at it now. Just making the contact, and all three times actually the response was pretty immediate and pretty, they were really interested, which is great. I mean, with Timpson, it was a case of James Timpson, I think he went to the Fringe when he was younger and used to work there, so he knows the kind of some of the people that currently run the venues there, because they kind of grew up together or they were friends before, and obviously was therefore up for the idea because he knew what it was. And with Runesicle, the guys at Jagex, I guess there's some sort of correlation between video games and fringe theatre. There seems to be a bit of a correlation in the audiences, I think. And so they were equally up for it because they'd been to the Fringe as well. With the Scouts, it was just a case of, I think they just thought it sounded like a good idea or something that they could help us out with. And and here we are.
And so they did sponsor the shows. I mean, just in case anyone's been living under a rock, Timpson's is this shoe repairers and key cutter place that you'll find on most high streets.
I mean, to be fair, it's very UK centric.
Yeah.
Timpson. I mean, I don't think they've are planning to or have ventured out of the UK. But they are the most famous brand of shoe mending, key cutting, and I remember just thinking that was a very bizarre combination of things and obviously worthy of a musical.
Yeah.
But yeah, they sponsored the show, which is, I mean, just mad to think really, because at that point we hadn't done anything. They didn't really know what they were sponsoring fully, because although we'd share clips and songs and things with them, I don't think there's any real sense of what a show can be like or how it will be received until it's up on its feet, you know. So we were very lucky that they first sponsored, I think it was like sort of half the cost of the Edinburgh run, and then sponsored the whole tour after that.
Great.
But every company, I mean, this is sort of our own, the thing that we do in Gigglemug is sort of our signature thing, is working with different organizations. But they all work completely differently as well. So Timpson seemed to be the most kind of straightforward and just a very successful kind of format, because I think because it's like a family run business, despite it being huge, and there being, you know, stores all over the place. Surprisingly, that it is still kind of run by one person or a group of people who then, you know, entrust their stores with the owners of said stores, and they can kind of do what they want in their respective shops and that sort of thing. So that's why it worked for us to get in contact with them, I guess, and why they seemingly were so open to it. Whereas it's a very different thing when you're working with a company like Jagex, who make the game RuneScape, because there's a lot of people involved. A lot of people have to sign off on things. And for that reason, we kind of developed the show as a parody musical, so as to not kind of step on any toes or anything. And then we linked up with them post Edinburgh run.
Oh, okay, great.
So yeah, which was really cool. And it's one of those of, I totally understand. I think sometimes it was what I was saying before about you're not really getting a full sense of what a show could be like until it's on its feet. They kind of waited for it to be, and then when, you know, they saw the response, they were happy to help out. And yeah, so that's how those have worked. And then with Scouts, it's they're a charity, so they're not helping us. They can't help us kind of financially, but they honestly, the fact that they can shout about it on their socials has made up for that. So like, honestly, it's great. That's the fact that we're selling all these tickets so early on while we extended the run is mostly due to their support in that way, at least at this point, because you know, the nature of, I think we were saying this downstairs, but this idea that I think musical theatre fans, or at least from my experience, are booking tickets nearer the time. Like, I would do the exact same. Whereas Scout groups and leaders are booking in advance because they want to, well, they're prepared, be prepared. That's their thing, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a really cool little balance, I think.
Yeah. And so did you, when you were coming up with these ideas, is there kind of a, okay, and we could link that to Timpson's, or do you have loads of ideas and you apply to different people and see who is interested in taking them on, or?
So, I mean, it's interesting. Those first three were very much just the ideas themselves. I always thought, I mean, I think someone pointed out to me that Timpson was the best example, or the only kind of chain of a shoe mending, key cutting business. Obviously, there's not many of them. But we definitely didn't go into it thinking that we could get sponsorship at all. That was something that we kind of learned along the way, and then it sort of dawned on us that, okay, we could fund our shows in a very different kind of practical way than other groups would, other theatre groups would. And so I think it was a case of, I knew I wanted to make a fantasy show, and I knew I wanted to make a video game show and a multi-pathway show. And so I think it was, I wanted to find something that was kind of as niche as Timpson, but also had the same level of recognition, or at least, because that's on a global scale, but probably, I don't know, a lot less people in the UK might have heard of it, but globally it definitely makes up for that, if you know what I mean. So, and then the Scouts, I mean, everyone knows the Scouts, and I just always wanted to write a musical about it. I was kind of surprised that it hadn't been done, really. So I thought, yeah, this is the time to do it.
Yeah. And with the Scout musical, I believe you took Timpson to the other palace as well.
Yeah, for one show, our first ever kind of public performance. So it's quite nice now that this is our 5th kind of anniversary year, I guess. And it will almost be 5 years since that show that we're performing Scouts for a full run. So it's quite nice kind of, circular thing going on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't usually dive in with the funding, but we kind of have. So in terms of funding, you're doing that. And then did you get any other form of funding, or are you self-funding?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I am actually allowed to say about other organizations that, the shows are based on. But certainly I think it's one that we'd often try and raise funds from doing other shows and hoping that they can kind of at least go towards future productions. So we've also got the Bean Spillers, an improvised musical, which is
fantastic,
gossip.
which is fantastic, and everyone should go see it. I think it's great. I've seen it twice already.
Oh, really?
Always different?
Out of curiosity, which shows? Do you remember what the gossip was?
I remember the most recent one, which was the Yellow Kettle.
Oh, yeah. That is our most recent show. That's the last one we did.
So the Yellow Kettle, somebody threw it away.
I think it was that someone had a kettle that was really rubbish and horrible and lime scaly and gross, and their flatmate just threw it away one day, despite it being like their favourite kettle. And so I think they got a new kettle as well, and it was, I think they fell out over it, the
gossip.
A great kind of start to a story. So yeah, like you said, what we do is we take a bit of gossip and then turn it into a one-act, full kind of improvised musical. So the nice thing about that show as well is that it doesn't really have a sell-by date, I suppose, like some fringe theatre does, and like our other shows, so Timpson and Moonsicle, I think we kind of knew they could only, perform or be staged for so long. Whereas the great thing about an improvised musical is that you can, just do it for forever, I guess. For as long as there's gossip, we'll be making shows about it. And the nice thing is that we've kind of built up a bit of an audience for those shows now, which means that, if we can sell out a performance, then we can put funds towards other things. So, that definitely was a good sort of formula for when Alex Prescott, who is my fellow bean spiller, and I co-wrote Runesicall with, it was a good sort of strategy that we had, at least to get up to the fringe.
In terms of your roles in these projects, can you take us through that? Because I'm always aware when people are making their own theatre, they're usually taking on 5 million jobs. Can you tell us a little bit about your roles?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think usually the main 4 are, I think the classic ones really. It's the producing, the writing, the acting, the directing.
Just 4 then.
Just the 4. But then you also end up, and this is sort of one of those things that I'm so used to doing now, and I think that is quite a good, mindset to have. At least I'd say it's good. I don't know if it actually is, but I think you end up doing so many other jobs that you don't expect to do because you've kind of got to. I think editing, graphic design, things that like set design or costume design, things that you just don't think you'd ever be, would be something that you could do. And it's great in a way because you just learn to develop all these different skills, and going into a new show off the back of it, you have a much better understanding of it going into it, or at least from a budgeting perspective as well. But as far as, producing goes, I never imagined it would be something that I would do at all, until it sort of just happened when we were doing Timpson, and it made sense. And then I realized that I could kind of do it. And once you've, toured one show, you know how to do it from there. But yeah, those are the main ones. I don't think I'm always a writer. Acting is generally because it's fun, which is great. I love doing it, but it's also to cut down on costs as well. A lot of this is budget related, I realize. It's just the nature of it, I think, is that, if you have yourself in a production, then that is one less person that you have to worry about or organize scheduling, or there are so many kind of different elements to that. And so, yeah, I love I love the acting. I mean, it was the thing that I did first before anything else, really. That's why, yeah, I'd say it's sort of the second. And then directing, I really enjoy, but I didn't really have any experience before Timpson doing it. And I do like doing it. I think it's just very difficult doing both acting and directing. Is a really weird combo. It's worked quite well with Runesicle, where Alex and I were both acting and directing, because it meant that at least we could direct each other.
Yeah.
Which makes it more feasible. But I'm looking forward to Scouts, where I'm not acting. We've got 6 actors and I can just direct.
So how did you come by your collaborators? Because I know you work with Alex and you've worked with him on Runesicle, and he's not involved in Scouts, is he?
No, but yeah, we were involved in, or are involved in, the Bean Spillers together, and he was in Timpson as an actor as well. So we've known each other since we were babies, which is handy. We've obviously been friends for that long. And I think I don't know whether it is coincidence that we both followed very similar career paths, or is the fact that he's a few years older than me and he was doing it and I thought it looked cool. So it's very possible that was the way it happened. But yeah, so we've known each other for a long time, and he got involved when we started touring Timpson. I think with Scouts, it was a case of I was looking for a composer, and some friends put me in touch with David Fallon, who's just brilliant. He's so good at writing kind of catchy pop songs, and we've got this style in Scouts which he's coined as like campfire pop, MT sort of thing, which is just really nice to have kind of a very signature style running all the way through it. And he's cracking, and that was purely just through friends and friends of friends and that sort of thing. And yeah, I feel like generally now it's sort of through other people, I'd say, or through the different networks. Certainly with the Bean Spillers, we get a different guest improviser every show, and that really has been from, I don't know, I think just meeting one person from, say, Showstopper, and they might know someone from Mischief, and that person from Mischief might know someone from like Ostentatious or something, and it's slowly like it's all, I mean, as you know as well, the improv world is sort of a bizarre kind of networky, culty thing, which everyone seems to know everyone. Yeah. And having some great collaborators like Jordan Clark, who is what was our first pianist and comes back now and then.
And who is also amazing.
And
a friend of mine.
Oh, great. So sweet. Yeah, he's such a talented guy, and he knows everyone.
Yeah.
Jules, our improv lighting designer, seems to know everyone as well. I think a lot of the time it is just really handy having some people develop a show with you who are really invested in the show and can vouch for you as a person, and the show in general when they're recommending you to other people, because obviously you never want to feel like you have to recommend someone if you don't necessarily believe that you should be.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is just purely through, I don't know, just meeting people on the scene, on the circuit, and generally just reaching out. I think, to be honest, like the biggest takeaway for me, I'd say, is just the fact that you generally just have nothing to lose by asking. And I think really, I mean, like, it must be like 90% of the people that we've asked to be involved in Bean Spillers have said yes. And it doesn't affect you at all if someone says no, like, it just doesn't matter. So yeah, I think that's just putting yourself out there and just asking, because you have very little to lose, I'd say, generally. And if they do say no, then at least you've made contact for something else down the line, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that might be advice for all theater makers in general, right?
Yeah, totally. I think also, if you just admire someone's work in any respect, I think just reaching out is, why would you not? Provided you can find a way of contacting them, which, I mean, as I've proven from searching the web for Timpson emails or people who work at Jagex or whatever, like, you can always find a way. It definitely helps if you've got a mutual friend, but I think generally speaking, people are kind of happy to help.
And so you are an improviser. Obviously, that's one of your shows. You do an improvised musical. So when you're writing, how much does the improv influence your writing? Do you write do you talk to yourself? How do you
Yeah,
get
sure.
writing?
Well, I think it's really interesting you say that, actually, because it was the whole, so Gigglemug kind of started from improv, in the four guys who we wrote Timpson together. We were all in an improv musical at uni. That's how we met, and I think that's how we developed this style of everything. I don't know. There's this nature, and I say this all the time because I think it's just quite a good way of describing what we do. In musicals in general, on the West End or Broadway or whatever, if everything is kind of said in a very specific way. I think a lot of the time, in comedy shows, like, jokes are said in the same way, gags are kind of hit the same notes and that sort of thing. And we love this idea that we could have a scripted show with the energy of a improvised one, and I think that's sort of the mindset we went into Timpson with. The fact that you could, I don't know, you could have some sort of interaction with an audience member that's not at all planned, and then it is a reference throughout the rest of the show, and you can change the script and you can make each other laugh. And I think people have kind of picked up on the fact that we love to do that, and make it so that the actors on stage are having as good a time as the audience is as well. So I think that is, that's sort of how improv started everything for us, and we've continued that style into Runesicle and will into Scouts as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of a clip of the show I watched last night, Timpson.
Yeah.
With the dog, the little dog, and I think Alex was definitely trying
Quite
to make
traumatizing.
his fellow actor laugh.
Yeah. Which, when you do that so many times, it's quite hard to do it a different way. But you'll find a way. Like, that's the thing. I think it's just setting that as a target, because audiences love it as well. Audiences love when actors on stage, or if you make mistakes as well, we always just I don't think that's ever been an issue so much for us, because we do it every show, and because it's just human, and rather than, I don't know, it obviously depends what it is, but I think rather than brushing over it, sometimes it can be quite fun to comment on it or have someone else comment on it. I mean, I went to Warwick Uni and did history, but the Musical Theatre Society was where I made most of my friends, and then where Gigglemug started and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And lots of loads of really talented people like Rob Madge have come out of Warwick, doing the MTW, the Musical Theatre Society there.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so, what was the thing that was there a thing that made you kind of go, right, this is enough, I'm going to make my own things? Or was it kind of quite organic?
Yeah, I think it was probably the fact, I've always hated auditions, and I also hate that, I don't know, that people do have the power often just to flat out say no and to stop the creative process and that sort of thing. Especially from an acting perspective, I think that must be where you see it the most. And so off the back of that, I kind of, and this must be the reason why most people make their own stuff, is just, I just thought, well, why don't I just set up a theatre company and make the stuff that I really want to see, because I'm sure I'm not alone in that, and I'm sure other people want to see it as well. And to go about it like that and develop a sort of an audience and a following, and keep making shows. And I think that was probably the mindset of it.
I think so many actors will relate to that.
Yeah, I think so. It must be the advice that is heard most now, but I think just doing it yourself a lot of the time, although it's hard in many respects, but equally, if you surround yourself with talented people, I definitely didn't know how to write a musical when I first started writing one, but I had 3 people also in a similar position, and we kind of together managed to find a way. And you learn so much from doing a show the first time. And I think also just the importance of, it's so important just to get stuff out there, because it is so, that I think that could be really scary. The idea of like the first time you present your own work to someone. I think if you can do it as quickly and as painlessly as possible, whoever it is in front of, even if it's small, pub theatre or something, it's so much easier beyond that point, because once you've done one thing, then you can do anything, really.
Yeah. And so was Rob Madge one of the people you wrote Timpson with?
No. So they were in the original, the Edinburgh run that we did, and then in the filmed version.
One that I watched. Yes.
Yeah, totally. And so there were lots of different, just really talented, lots of people who are doing musical theatre now, but none of them studied it. They all did it as part of a society at uni. I think I don't really know what, I think I definitely remember at the start of school, I was always thinking, I've really got to try for drama school or something like that. That's the obvious way into it. But I also knew I wanted to be a writer, and I kind of knew from doing a few writing courses that I didn't like necessarily how it is taught, script writing and that sort of thing. So the thing that made the most sense was just to go to uni and do it as a thing on the side. And also because I'm too lazy to do drama school. I feel like I honestly don't know how people do those days on their feet. It sounds relentless. And so yeah, that's also part of the reason, I imagine. Unrelated to Gigglemug and the theatre side of things, I sort of, over lockdown, I developed or I wrote a series, and then very quickly got very lucky in that an agent sort of took it on board and said yes, and then a production company said yes, and then a channel said yes, and it was sort of a very quick year of yeses followed by a very slow year of nothing. And it's a very up and down sort of industry, pace wise at least. But yeah, I think I just knew that I just wanted to learn from doing, and it's probably the same with the acting side of things as well. I felt like I just learned so much more that way than someone telling me, how something should be written or how to act, I guess. And I'm not saying that, I'm sure I probably would have been a better actor had I gone to drama school, but I think I think I'm a much happier person for not, and I think that the work that we're developing is the way it is because of the different pathways that people involved have taken as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting. I went and saw Operation Mincemeat recently, and I noticed that almost all of them in their bios said, well, I say that, but I think a few of them said in their bios, strongly against train, refuses to be trained, really, sort of thing. And I thought that was lovely, because we all come at it differently. There's a million incredibly talented actors I know that never trained, and then there's wonderful ones that did the drama school and did every course, are always out there. And
that's not a right way. And yeah, I don't know. I think it was quite daunting that the idea that if you go to drama school, obviously there is a lot of pressure whilst you're there to get an agent, and then the agent sets you up with your gigs and your auditions and that sort of thing. But there's still, it's what I was saying before, what we were talking about when it was this idea of sort of letting people have the opportunity to say no to you professionally. Like, I think if you're making your own stuff, then the only person saying no is you. And you can kind of, as if you have an idea that you do think is going to work, then there's nothing sort of standing in your way from stopping you from actually doing it, apart from the financial side, which you have to work out yourself. But yeah, I think that was part of the idea of it as well, at least the reason that I went about it this way. Yeah.
And so how has making your own work, if you were going to sort of analyze it, how has it changed the game for you? Like, how have you found the industry has changed now that you are someone who makes and creates work and jobs for other people? And
I don't think I'd go back to any other way of doing it, at least as far as theatre goes. I mean, not to say, I guess I'd love to be in something else.
If the phone rings, you're not going to be like,
no. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. But as far as theatre at the moment goes, I feel like we've just got a system that works really well, but it is purely, it is a purely personal experience, and it doesn't mean that it's definitive or right or you know, there's no correct way of doing it. But yeah, I'd say it's, I can't really imagine it. I think so the TV side of things that I've been doing for the past couple of years, that is what for example, my agent is specifically for TV. So the theatre side of things, I kind of realised I didn't need an agent for. And so she's amazing. And she handles all of the TV stuff because I'd have no idea of who to get in touch with about that. I think that's because they're so inherently different formats. Theatre, you can put stuff on yourself. TV, it's so much harder to there's so much that you just don't know or you don't think about. And it's one of those that you can't really do yourself, or at least you can't like platform it yourself, you know, whereas you can reach out to a theatre. So I think as far as, you know, I think I'm sort of exploring both worlds really, where I sort of rely very heavily on other people to do all of the producing and production side as far as TV goes. And then in theatre, it is sort of down to you. And as it stands, I like how both of those are panning out, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I presume you were writing for theatre first.
Yeah. So in my second year at uni was when we went up to the Fringe the first time with Timpson. And then touring it in my third year of uni. So I wasn't really around much at uni. But yeah, that was the first way. And then I always wanted to write for TV. That was always kind of, actually that was always my dream, and really initially was why I got into theatre, was so I could hopefully maybe do TV at some point, or it might be, I just saw an opportunity to make stuff now, like actually make stuff, rather than, you know, you just have no idea what the time frame is going to be like as far as TV goes. But then over the first lockdown, when I had a chance to write for TV and that sort of thing, it was, yeah, I could start thinking about, oh, this might not get made for however many years, but I've got however many years right now, because I don't know how long this the lockdown's going to go on for. So yeah, so it was definitely theatre first. But I mean, hey, if you can do TV first, then do it. Absolutely. I mean, I've learned a lot from both experiences.
But I guess I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just interested to know, do you feel like you gained confidence or anything that kind of then meant, okay, now I feel like I can write anything?
Yeah, I think from the theatre side of things.
From the theatre side of things.
Yeah, and I remember when, I really did. Maybe too much. I think, like, I definitely went into writing for TV, and obviously with theatre, you've got your collaborators, and there is a certain amount of, adapting, changing, sending ideas to each other and agreeing and disagreeing and that sort of thing, and you develop something that way. And you do that with TV, but on a bigger scale, in the sense that, you know, you might write a whole script and then you send it to the production company and they change everything, or give you notes to change everything. You change it all, and then you keep going back and forth, and then they share it with a channel, and then it happens again. And you know, sort of, it seemingly, definitely at the time, it kind of feels like it can go on for forever. I think when I first went into TV, I definitely had the mindset of like, oh no, we can't change this. This is the best bit about it, even if it was something really small. I think I was in a mindset of, I'm so used to the theatre world of, you know, you do collaborate obviously on the different aspects of a show, but it's I don't know. I don't think there's the same necessity to change things that there is in the TV world. And I very quickly learnt, I think in contrast of that kind of couple of years that I've been involved in the TV side of things, or with a production company and with a channel, you just get used to changing anything. And now genuinely whatever it is, even if it's like the name of the TV show that you've been imagining for however many years being that TV show, if they were like, yeah, change it, yeah, you just do it. Which I don't know. I don't know if there's a good, I don't know if there's a right or a wrong. I think really it's about balance. Like, you've got to always take the notes, always, like, you know, take on advice, especially when people do have more experience than you. But equally, you've got to fight your corner and believe that, you have written something or made something in a specific way for a reason, and you've got to trust yourself. Just because you haven't had specific training or you're young doesn't mean that it's not your opinion isn't valid. It definitely is. So it's definitely been a real crash course the past, first the kind of like first few years of theatre, and then now these first few years of TV for me is definitely, I've just learned a lot about it.
I admire it hugely. I really do. Because I would say there are so many people probably listening as well that have great ideas and they're not doing anything with them. Mm-hmm. I can say this because I think I'm probably sometimes one of them.
Totally, yeah.
So what makes you different? I guess is my thing. Like, what do you think has sort of driven you to get to that finish line?
So I genuinely think it is. I know so many people who come up with great ideas for things, and obviously it's at its most fun when it's an idea, or when the planning stage is the best bit. It can be short sometimes, but when you're like planning out a story, it's so much fun. I think in comparison, the slog is the writing, and you hit walls, and it is, it can be exhausting sometimes, like draining. But I honestly think the difference between someone actually making something and not getting past the idea, and it sounds really obvious now that I'm saying it, is actually just writing it and specifically finishing it. Because I know so many people who just don't like finish things. If you finish it, then you're done. You can send it out, you can do whatever you want with it. But there's definitely some procrastination and that sort of thing before you get to that point, I'd say. And I totally get it. I think it was handy, writing with different people on theatre productions, because you could definitely motivate each other. I remember Alex and I, when we were writing Runesical, we had I think we were trying to write it in like 3 months, because at the time it was pre-COVID, and we were sort of chatting to Jagex, who make the game, about deadlines and that sort of thing. So we thought there was this real necessity to get it done in a really short amount of time, and we did. We wrote it in kind of 3 months, it was a case of like, we'd meet each other twice a week maybe. He'd come around mine, I'd make food, he'd make the journey over, and we'd say, okay, we're gonna write a song today, and that sort of thing. And we just kept doing that. And I mean, I don't know whether the show is better or not for us doing that, but it definitely got it done, which is, I think, you can do it. And I think having collaborators who can remind you or help you to get these different aspects actually finished is probably a big help in that, for sure.
So deadlines and collaborators.
Yeah, I think so. Even if you don't want to necessarily write a story with someone else, if you have someone on board or someone in mind who, I don't know, you want to direct it or you want to be in it, or something like that, then at least that's another person's involvement. And if you can make some agreements on, I need to get this done by this point. Also, if you actually book a venue for it, then that is gonna, put some fire under you.
Could you tell me about a time that you've found a challenge or a roadblock or something in your way, in your process of making a musical or any show, really?
I think I'd say honestly that I think there's a case of you've really got to prepare for so much could go wrong and does go wrong all the time. It's useful having experience in it, or at least knowing how to deal with it. But if you've got people around you who can be proactive and share their ideas or thoughts and get a plan of action together, then that's all you need. You can really just face any challenge. I think even if I'm working on a show or something by myself specifically, I think I've got enough people around me, not necessarily creative actually, even family or friends, you know, that you can talk to about the issue, and even as just like a sounding board, I think, just so you can then bounce back is, so important, I'd say.
So when you come up against those roadblocks, lean on those people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's so, because they'd be happy to, and also knowing that you would do the same for them, I think is totally the thing that helps you get through all of those challenges. I can think of, there's so many different, or if someone's unwell for a show and they can't go on, although I really want to touch wood now, but that you know, it hasn't happened to us so far. I mean, I think it's one of those that you really, it is the ultimate test of yourself as a creative, because you just thinking on your feet and trying to find solutions to problems that you wouldn't necessarily have ever thought of. I think is that's you really learn who you are at that point, as in the arts, I guess. Yeah.
And have you had any like mentors or people in the industry that have kind of really guided or helped you in any of your processes?
I think maybe in its original sense, as a mentor, I'd say someone like Paul Taylor Mills, who runs the Turbine and the other Palace, has definitely. I remember he reached out over like lockdown 3 maybe in 2021, I think, very out of the blue, just saying that he'd seen some of our stuff online and wanted to help in any capacity, and has been a really good point of reference. I mean, obviously has just got so much experience and has achieved so much, but being able to kind of come to him with any questions, anything at all really, that might be relevant, has been really useful. I think you get a lot of, I don't know, I think a lot of people have been involved in a kind of in a mentorship sense with the company, but I don't know if they'd ever refer to themselves as that. Like, I could think of people who have, for example, like Justin Brett from Showstopper, who I wrote a podcast called Archergeddon about the Archers if it was in the apocalypse, and he was involved in that. I think I met him through Sue Harrison, also from Showstopper, and she was in Timpson. And it's sort of like it's that thing we were talking about earlier, of someone knows someone and you eventually meet these different people. But Justin was great for the Bean Spillers when we were starting out, and we didn't really, I don't think we fully knew what we wanted the show to be, and I remember he just gave up some time to be in the rehearsal room, and it was such an interesting, we learned so much, and he was also our first ever guest as well, and I remember we just learned so much in that room about improvising, I guess, and that's really just thanks to the fact that he was up for just coming in for an afternoon and helping us out. It's things like that. I feel like there's been mainly a lot of people involved who have just given up their time and helped us in some capacity, but I don't think they necessarily refer to themselves as a mentor, but I think it is sort of that.
Yeah. Amazing. So I think you have taken Timpson and you took Runesicle. I don't know if you're going to take Scouts, but you've taken all your shows to Edinburgh so far, your stage shows. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people that's kind of a goal. In terms of, do you think that's really important for artists making their own work?
I think there's a balance really, because it's a tricky one to say just go and do, because it's not a particularly accessible thing. Is obviously the reputation it's got is sort of unparalleled really. I think the reason it was so good for us, or it has been so good to us, is that you can get more publicity and press on a show there than you ever really could outside of it in the UK, I'd say. It's such a bizarre thing that, for example, like the amount of reviews we got for the Bean Spillers over a year was the same that we got for Runesicle in Edinburgh for a month. It's such a saturated thing up there, and if you can find your gaps in the market as well, I think for us it was very much if you compare the size of the amount of plays that are in the Fringe catalogue to the amount of musicals, it was sort of a no-brainer that, I mean, I always wanted to do musicals, but it just helped out the fact that there were less shows on, which is no doubt, why our stuff was picked up more. I definitely don't think it's the be-all and end-all at all, but it has got this thing about it that makes people always just want to keep going back and keep presenting shows there, because I think there is that history of it, and I think it's just that people want to discover something at the Fringe, both in a sense of like the press or producers, but also audiences want to be the first person to see something. I don't think it's I don't think it is a necessity at all. But I think the benefits, you really are sort of paying for those benefits in the amount of effort it takes to get up there. I mean, I can't see us going with Scouts, because I think Scouts were trying to do something a little bit different in that it's hopefully more of a kind of commercial hitting show than our Fringe shows like Runsical and Timpson. There's something that I'm working on at the moment, which I would love to take next year, would be the plan, if everything aligns. But again, that is the nature of it. And then I don't know if I'm quite happy to call it there as far as Fringes go. I think it is it's an amazing thing. It is so draining, and it is I love it, and I love going back to Edinburgh. I think it's an amazing place, and there is nothing else like it in the world. But it's also one of those of it is quite exhausting, and you want to find a point where I don't know if it's a need to, but more of you don't have to. You can do so many shows there and then be like, okay, I've done it now. But yeah, we'll see. You never know how it's going to pan out, I guess.
But you haven't done it small. I mean, a lot of people take a one-hander. They take themselves, and they sleep on people's floors for a month. You guys had a cast. I think for Timpson's it was 4 or 5.
Well, Timpson was technically. I mean, there were 6 in the cast, but then there were 3 in the band. We did that the whole time, and the reason that we did that as well is because we hadn't done it before. So we were sort of I don't know, a medium-sized show is the hardest. I think a lot of people say is the hardest to tour, because or just take anywhere or stage, really, because it's such a awkwardly sized thing. It's often too big for some venues and too small for others, and having that amount of people is just it is quite excessive. But it made the show what it was, and maybe was part of the reason why that show in particular stood out. But the same for us, having that massive set as well. These things we just probably wouldn't do now. I'm so glad we did, but as soon as you do it, you're like, oh, that's why you don't do it, because it is for these reasons, and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think. But they're also the shows that I like the most are the ones where it's a busier stage and there's more people involved, and I think you can have more fun with more people naturally. So I think that's why we'll probably always do them like this, because really they're the shows that we want to see. I don't think there are definitely times when Alex and I thought, oh, we could just maybe Runsical should just be like a 2-hander or something, but it's not the show, and it's not the show that we want to see or make. So you put yourself through those challenges for the outcome, I guess.
Yeah. So what in terms of taking a show to the Fringe, what do you think your average person should budget, maybe for taking their first show to the Fringe?
Oh man, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say how much shows have cost for us, because I don't want to put people off it.
No, absolutely.
Because I also don't think a show necessarily needs to be however expensive. Yeah. I think really what it comes down to, and what you'll have to look out for, is the cost of accommodation. So if you know someone it literally will save you so much money if there is someone we never have. Hopefully one day, maybe I'll just move. that's one big thing. The theatre hire is the other big thing. It's those two together, and then obviously paying your cast own creatives. A lot of the time, Alex and I, for example, wouldn't pay ourselves for something until way after. It's kind of a sad truth, and I don't think it is necessarily good or right or should be how it is. I think at least with our shows, there was always a mindset of, if we want to do this in a specific way, then we're always going to do more work and get at least less financially from it than other people involved, until hopefully further down the line it's that weird kind of mindset. But there are so many ways around it. There are so many loopholes you can find, and if, for example, it's a one-person show and you're in charge of it, and you're cutting costs there immediately. If you've got someone to stay with, great. There's obviously all the like costume and prop hire and fees and all sorts, but again, there are things, you learn how to make stuff yourself as well, which again is another skill that you just didn't think you'd use. So yeah, I'd say like, if to at least encourage anyone to do it, like, it is, for all its faults, it is an amazing experience, I think. And I definitely would never have thought that I could produce anything before I did start doing it as well. So I do feel like, in that sense, you definitely can do it. If I can do it, if I can produce something, like, yeah, sure as hell you can.
If you had to give one piece of advice to the person who's sitting on that great idea, what would it be if they want to produce their first show?
I think it's a case of literally doing it. Just do it. I think you've just got to set yourself a schedule, or at least surround yourself with people who can help you do it, or at least remind you to do it. Setting yourself like a schedule, or I don't know, something like that, something like routine and fixed that you can just rely on in order to get it done. I think it's just so, that's what it comes down to a lot of the time. And just finish it. Just finish it, basically. I think that is it. That's my advice. As soon as you finished it, as soon as you put it on somewhere, then it's out there. You've done your first thing that, you didn't think you could do, or suddenly that idea of putting on your own work is, that fear is gone because you've done it. So just do it, and then beyond that point, it should hypothetically always be slightly easier to do the next one.
Yeah. And I think we all have this expectation that the first one we make is going to land us, at the Olivier's, right?
Right. I don't think it doesn't, even the success stories, I don't think it was ever their first thing. It also doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how long it shouldn't matter how long it takes you, or, it's obviously not healthy to kind of compare yourself to other people, or how quickly they manage to do something, for example, because everyone does it at their own pace. And that person who did it really quickly was probably also thinking, oh, I wish I was quicker like this person. Like, there's no set time or order or whatever to do it in.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
This has been wonderful and very inspirational.
Oh, it was I feel like it's quite cathartic. I feel like I've just sort of spoken about all of these different experiences and stuff we've had. But it's been great.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Make It Work podcast. You can follow us on @MakeItWorkPodcastUK on Instagram. You can also email us at makeitworkpodcastuk@gmail.com. We're a new podcast. We'd love to hear from you and hear what you think of the show. And if you'd like to have anyone special on the show, if you think there are some topics we need to be covering that we're missing, we really want to hear your feedback. So please keep in touch and keep making it work.